If your life has gotten hard lately, don't ignore it. There's a pattern that repeats when God marks someone. First he breaks your comfort, then he reveals your purpose. And the worst part is, most people interpret that season as abandonment, when it's actually selection. In the next few minutes I'm going to show you 7 clear signs, and by the end you will understand why your pain started right when you were trying to do things right. Because that's what it feels like, doesn't it? Like you tried to do better, and right then, the ground shifted. Like the moment you finally decided to change, the world hit you with a fine. Like peace went on vacation and left you alone with questions nobody knows how to answer. And the strangest part is this: it's not just hard, it's a specific kind of hard. A hard that makes you more sensitive. A hard that forces you to think. A hard that steals your sleep and puts you in front of the mirror. A hard that separates you from people, places, and conversations you used to tolerate, and now you can't. Maybe you've thought it quietly so nobody calls you too much. Maybe you smile at the world, and inside you're asking, God, what's happening to me? Stay with me, because what I'm about to say might sting at first, but in the end, it's going to put you back in order on the inside. And I need you to listen closely, because there's one sign, the third one, that almost always gets misunderstood. And because of that mistake, a lot of people get stuck, thinking they're failing, when in reality they're being formed. Before we get into the signs, here's one idea that should stay with you through the entire video. When God chooses you, He doesn't announce it with applause. He reveals it through process. He doesn't shout it in public. He whispers it in private. And many times, the first thing He does isn't to give you something, it's to take away what no longer serves you. That's why it got hard. And here's what matters. This isn't to feed your ego like you read better than other people. No, being chosen isn't superiority. It's responsibility, it's purpose, it's weight, it's direction. It means your life can't just go anywhere anymore, because there's a destination pulling you even if you can't see it yet. Now, breathe, and see if this sounds like you. The first sign, you started being set apart, even though you didn't ask for it. Some people fit in easily. They show up, blend in, adapt, laugh, stay. But you show up, and even if you try, something never fully clicks. Like your soul has a detector for shallow things. Like you can be surrounded by everyone, and still feel alone. You get invited places, and suddenly you don't even feel like going. They call you for conversations that used to entertain you, and now they drain you. You catch yourself listening to the same old stuff, and inside you say, I can't do this anymore. And listen, this isn't you thinking you're better. It's that it doesn't taste the same anymore. Like something inside you changed flavor. Like God changed your appetite without asking you. Sometimes the separation comes softly. You start losing interest. Sometimes it comes hard. You get pushed out. People leave. Doors close. And you experience it as rejection. But many times it's direction. Life gets hard when God is moving you out of a place where you are getting too comfortable. Because there are comforts that feel like home, but they're actually a cage. And God didn't choose you to stay in a smaller version of yourself. There's an ancient line that says something like, before I formed you, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Don't take it as pretty poetry. Take it as an explanation. Some separations aren't punishment, they're preparation. And if lately you've felt friendships, environments, plans falling apart, and you don't understand why, stay with me. Because the second sign is going to give you the context you're missing. If this is describing your life, write in the comments. It is not a coincidence, not to show off, to recognize it. Because when you write it, you accept it. And when you accept it, you stop fighting the process. The second sign, you went through a strange kind of pain, and it didn't destroy you. I'm not talking about ordinary pain. I'm talking about the kind that hits when nobody sees it. The kind that leaves you functioning on the outside, but with a tight chest on the inside. Maybe it was betrayal from someone who swore they never would. Maybe it was a loss that forced you to be strong when you didn't want to be. Maybe it was a silent abandonment, texts that stopped coming, attention that never returned, affection that went cold. Maybe it was watching other people move forward, while you felt like your life stopped. And here's the strange part. What breaks many people's faith didn't rip yours away. It hit you. It confused you. It made you cry. But it didn't turn you off. Do you know why? Because some pains come like fire, not to burn you up, but to burn off what doesn't belong. Because God doesn't waste tears. He uses them. He doesn't waste wounds, he transforms them. He doesn't waste nights, he teaches through them. There's another truth that repeats in life. All things work together for good, even if you can't see it yet. That sentence only makes sense when you're inside something that feels unfair, and you know that place. If you're here listening, you've probably survived things you shouldn't have survived. And if you survived, it wasn't luck, it was purpose, because the process didn't just hurt you, it refined you. It made you less naive, but more compassionate, more selective, but also wiser. It taught you to look life in the eyes, and the world is afraid of someone who suffered and didn't become bitter, because that person is dangerous in the best way. They don't break easily anymore. Stay with me, because what comes next is one of the most personal signs, and this is where many women get scared and think they're failing, when in reality God is pushing them forward. The third sign: there's a fire in you that won't go out, even if you want it to. Something strange happens. There are seasons where you say, "That's it, I don't want to think about this. I just want to disconnect." And you try, you distract yourself, you pack your schedule, you fill your mind, you keep your hands busy, but inside, something keeps insisting. An uneasiness, a calling, a feeling like you can't breathe when you walk away from what's deep. You can try to be who you used to be, you can try to settle, you can try to live on autopilot, and still, your inner world won't let you. It's not paranoia, it's not obsession, it's hunger. A hunger that can't be satisfied with noise, a hunger that can't be satisfied with approval, a hunger that can't be satisfied with entertainment. And here's the mistake so many people make. They call that discomfort guilt, so they start punishing themselves mentally. They tell themselves, "I'm inconsistent, I'm weak. If I really were serious, I wouldn't struggle like this." But listen to this clearly. If the fire is still there, it's because God hasn't let you go. Some people grow cold and don't even care. They drift away and don't feel it. They get lost and don't notice. But you, not you, you can fall. But you can't stay down without something inside you pulling you back up. You can get distracted, but that gentle voice returns. You can try to run, but it catches up to you. That's not condemnation. That's direction. There's a powerful image that says, "It felt like fire in my bones, and I couldn't hold it in." That doesn't mean you have to sound perfect or pretend you never struggle. It means there's something in you that one T lets you live shallow even if the world applauds it. And yes, that's why it got hard, because when God lights something inside you, your life starts feeling uncomfortable with what you used to tolerate. Now we're getting to a sign that will make you say, "That's me," because it has to do with strange obstacles, resistance, things getting stuck right when you're about to move forward. The fourth sign: when you try to rise, something pushes you down. Some people decide something and everything flows. They change direction and the path opens. They ask and they receive. They knock and the door opens. But you decide to move forward and a storm shows up. You dare to change and problems start raining down. You commit to peace and suddenly chaos multiplies. And then that poisonous thought appears. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but look at it from another angle. What if that resistance isn't a sign of error, but a sign of impact? Because life has an uncomfortable logic. When your destiny carries weight, your process feels heavier. When your purpose is big, your formation is intense. I'm not saying every problem is mystical. No, some things are just life. But there is a kind of difficulty that shows up as a pattern when you read about to make an internal leap. Arguments out of nowhere, fatigue with no clear reason, people getting mad at you because you changed, temptations that never used to matter, doubts that arrive right when you were finally steady. And that's where two types of people separate: those who retreat because they feel fear, and those who understand. If this rose up, it's because I'm heading towards something. Look, if you were irrelevant, nothing would try to push you. If your change didn't matter, there wouldn't be so much noise. If your life wasn't aiming at something greater, there wouldn't be so much resistance. Resistance isn't always proof you're losing. Sometimes it's proof you're entering. And here's the detail almost nobody tells you. God often allows pressure to teach you dependence, not on people, not on applause, not on everything is fine, but on the inner strength that's built when nobody is watching. That's why it got hard, because you are learning to stand without crutches. And if this is hitting you, stay with me, because the fifth sign is the one that changes your daily life the most. It's when you realize what used to fill you doesn't anymore. And that hurts, because you end up between two worlds. The fifth sign, your appetite changed, and now shallow things taste empty. You used to get excited about certain things. You used to spend hours in the same routine. You used to chase approval like it was oxygen. You needed to be seen, to get a reply, to be chosen, and suddenly, something broke. Not because of drama, because of maturity. Gossip doesn't fill you anymore. Empty flirting doesn't fill you anymore. Winning an argument doesn't fill you anymore. Image doesn't fill you anymore. That party that used to feel like life doesn't fill you anymore. And that scares you, because you think, so who am I now? Where do I belong? Why do I feel so strange? Welcome to the territory of people being formed. That place where you're not who you used to be, but you're not the finished version yet. It's uncomfortable, because you lose things, and you also lose cravings. You become more selective, more aware, more sensitive to what contaminates you inside. And the world might call you dramatic. It might call you intense. It might say, you changed. Yes, you changed, because God didn't choose you to keep repeating the same cycle. Here's a simple truth. If your mind is being renewed, your desires get rearranged. You stop chasing what gets applause, and you start chasing what builds you. You stop pursuing popularity, and you start pursuing peace. You stop trying to impress, and you start wanting purpose. And that transition feels like loneliness, because when your appetite changes, your company changes. When your focus changes, your conversations change. When your standard changes, your options change. That's why it got hard, because you were letting go of what kept you small. If you want more messages like this, subscribe now. Not for a number, for companionship. Because what comes next is going to hold you up. Now listen, the sixth sign is delicate, because many people hate this about themselves. They call it weakness, but it's actually a powerful tool when you learn how to use it. The sixth sign, you feel other people's pain, like it's your own. You walk into a room and you sense it. You look at someone and you notice what others don't. You hear, I'm fine, and you know they're not. And it's not that you're dramatic, you're sensitive. Sometimes it even annoys you, because you wish you were colder so it wouldn't hurt so much. You wish you wouldn't take it so personally. You wish you wouldn't carry so much. But for some reason, you care. It affects you. It goes straight through you. You've cried over things that didn't happen to you. You've carried people who didn't even thank you. You've felt a weight you can't explain. And here's the point. That sensitivity isn't an error. It's an ability to connect, to understand, to hold, to see. Most people live armored. They don't feel, they don't get involved. They don't commit, they don't risk. But you do. And that's why you've been hurt. Because when you feel, you expose yourself. Still, that same sensitivity is what makes you a refuge for others. It's what makes you a guide. It's what makes you support. God doesn't trust emotional depth to just anyone. Because emotional depth, well directed, heals, and misdirected, destroys. That's why your life got hard. Your heart is big, but your discernment is being trained. You're learning to help without losing yourself, to love without ending up empty, to give without giving yourself away. And now comes the final sign, the one that decides who stays in the process and who doesn't. Because this sign is the difference between someone who only talks and someone who builds. The seventh sign, you stopped wanting to show off and started wanting to build. There's a moment in your life when you no longer want to shine for ego. You want to shine for impact. You don't want applause for image. You want real fruit. You're not interested in winning the conversation. You're interested in winning your peace. You became quieter, more strategic, deeper. While others compete, you build. While others flex, you work. While others justify themselves, you change. And it doesn't look viral. It looks solitary. It looks slow. It looks boring to the world. But it's powerful. Because what God sustains isn't born from hurry. It's born from roots. And if you're at that point where cheap applause doesn't excite you anymore, where it feels hard to post just to post, where you don't care to prove yourself, where you'd rather move in silence, then hear this. You didn't burn out. You matured. You're leaving behind the need for other people's eyes. And you're learning to live for purpose. That's why it got hard. Because God is removing your addiction to validation. And when He removes that, He gives you something stronger, direction. Now, come back with me to the beginning. Why did my pain start right when I was trying to do things right? Because the process activates the moment you decide to take your life seriously. When you lived on autopilot, the system didn't bother you. When you settled, Nobody pressured you. When you stayed where everyone stays, the road felt comfortable. But the day you said, "I don't want to live like this anymore," that day your life started reorganizing. And reorganization hurts, because what was arranged wrong resists being moved. Sometimes God has to shake you so you'll release what was killing you slowly. Sometimes he has to close doors so you'll stop entering places where you go dim. Sometimes he has to let people leave so you learn not to sell your peace. Sometimes he has to break your comfort so your purpose can breathe. And yes, it feels hard, but hard doesn't mean wrong. Hard often means real. Now I'm going to ask you for something simple but strong. Pause inside and ask yourself this without lying. How many of these signs described you? If it was 1 or 2, you're probably entering. If it was 3 or more, you're probably deep in the process. And if it was almost all of them, then stop calling yourself punished. Stop calling yourself abandoned. Stop calling yourself out of place. What you're living might be selection. And I know the ego wants selection to feel like coronation, but it almost never does. Selection feels like pruning, like silence, like filtering, like fire, like training. Because God doesn't just want you inspired, he wants you steady. He doesn't just want you emotional, he wants you stable. He doesn't just want you speaking beautifully, he wants you living with direction. And now comes the most important part, what you do after you understand this. Because there are 2 ways to listen to a message like this. One is to feel relief and go back to the same thing tomorrow. The other is to feel truth and make a decision. Today, instead of fighting the process, you can walk with it. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you can start asking, "What is this forming in me? What is this removing from me? What is God teaching me through this difficulty?" Because when you ask those questions, pain stops being chaos and it becomes instruction. I am telling you, like I am looking you in the eyes, not broken. You're being formed. You're not late. You're being prepared. You're not alone. You're being set apart for something that needs your full version, not your people-pleasing version. That's why it got hard, because God loves you too much to leave you the same. And now let's do this together, right here, right now. If this message spoke to you, write in the comments, "God chose me," not as pride, as a decision. And I am going to ask you for one more thing. Share this video right now with a woman who is living through a hard season. Not tomorrow, today, because someone is crying in silence, thinking everything fell apart, when in reality, everything is being rearranged inside her. Save this video to come back to when doubts attack you. And subscribe, because the next message might be the missing piece that keeps you from giving up in the middle of the process. And when the hard returns, don't call it punishment. Maybe God isn't destroying you. Maybe God is raising you up.